And we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to the Wide World of Warhammer. With me today is a beautiful Icelandic man, Jokull. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. What about you? Thanks for having me.
Better now you're here. I've got at least one cup of coffee down the drain. So look, we're waking up slowly but surely. And look, it's 7 a.m. So it's not that early, but it damn well feels early. So but we're getting there. And I appreciate you staying up relatively quite late for this one. But we're not here to talk about time zones and all that jazz. We're here to talk about the business of competitive Warhammer and can it become an esport or a professional endeavor? So we'll see how we go and how the discussion leads us. But before I dive deep into it, Jokull, for people who have never heard of you or seen your beautiful face, maybe can you give us a bit of a background, I guess, what your history is?
Oh, yeah. So I started out in competitive chess when I was young, then moved abroad to do esports full time. Played for a team called Fnatic for 2 years. Then came back, went to business school, started a company, sold it last year, and I'm now back in esports working. Yeah, and been playing Warhammer a lot on as a hobby.
Just casually on the side as well, like being one of the world's best Warhammer players, while running a business and selling it. And now, as I understand, the CEO of another business, and we'll talk about. So, what did you used to play? So for Fnatic, obviously, people are familiar with the esports scene, know it's a relatively popular organization. But what did you play?
Oh yeah, I played Hearthstone for Fnatic. Yeah.
Very nice. What was the class? Were you a mage or a warlock?
I was known for mostly for druid, but I played a lot of warrior mages and some handlock as well back in the day. Yeah.
Very nice. So, something that I'm sure many of us aspire to do, but never got the chance to. Very good for you. So, what made you quit? Like, did you just not see was the writing on the wall, or was it just not as developed back then?
I did StarCraft beforehand, then went to Hearthstone for a long time, did some casting. So basically, I mean, it's a young man's game, and traveling 5 times a month and waking up at stupid o'clock in the evening, like once a week is not. It's a little bit draining, but yeah, I mean, just. It's a fun time, yeah.
No, fair enough. And so since then, obviously hang up the controller or hang up the boots like a retired per se with a Hearthstone. And I understand now, so you work in the esports industry a bit more. So could you elaborate a bit more what that looks like?
Oh yeah, so I'm the CEO of the Icelandic Esports Association. We're a member of the International Esports Association, the European Esports Association. So it's a governing body for sports here in Iceland, comparable to the Icelandic Football Association, the Handball Association. We have 26 clubs that have kids that go and train esports every week. We hold 100 tournaments per year. We have run 14 leagues for 6 different esports and organized national teams and to do a lot of things.
Very impressive. That's quite a feat, and it's amazing to see. Obviously, relatively small country of Iceland. There's that much competition already and depth. So, is there a Warhammer club or a Warhammer scene league in part of your association yet?
It's a lot smaller than esports, yeah. But we haven't had it as an esport. We did chess this year. We have a 16-man invitational for chess on a TV station we run. But it's something that's discussed. Like Sweden, for example, they don't view FIFA or NBA 2K as an esports. You can go all the way to chess and like online Scrabble and online Magic the Gathering being esports as well. But we've been more inclusive on the side of it here in Iceland.
It's very inclusive in what sense? Like, so you say like Sweden and stuff like that. It's like there's a generational difference, or a perspective of that. This doesn't count. This is a hobby or a game. Whereas you guys say no, this is a competitive endeavor. Is that what you mean, Jokull?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So they would say that the Football Association would handle FIFA, and the Basketball Association would handle NBA 2K, and Scrabble and chess can be involved with themselves. And but
sure.
We've been taking the sports game on and had one invitational in chess, which I think is fun, but we're not looking to go into chess in a major way, though. Yeah.
Sure. So, what's been the biggest one for curiosity's sake? What's been the biggest, I guess, competitive endeavor from an esport in your association with Iceland? What's the most popular one?
We have a Counter-Strike league that has 61 teams, which is about the size of Warhammer in the UK. So in Iceland, you have 61 teams for Counter-Strike. You have 72 teams for football. So it's the second biggest in that, and it's kind of crazy how many people play Counter-Strike. Yeah,
that is incredible. I would have guessed at least a quarter of that, not 61. That's incredible. That's amazing. So many players in that, and that's just one of many games. So, but we'll get to the sort of the topic at hand. So we'll ask the big question first. So, Jokull, do you think Warhammer can become, or competitive Warhammer, I should say, can become a professional endeavor in your expert opinion?
So it's I guess it comes to how you define a professional endeavor. Like you have, I'd say, less than 10 people that are playing this somewhat full time, but it's more of a content creation than a competitive thing because there's little or no prize money. I think the key thing is will people embrace tabletop simulator, and will we have the people? Can we find the people that want to actually do the online tournaments and stream from them, etc.? Because the kind of over the board streaming is just so cumbersome, So, for example, in esports we built a full-on production studio to host our leagues, and we work with a media company, and they also work with the Handball and Football Association. But the level of complexity, if you're doing over the board or in-person things like football and handball, is dramatically more difficult. And we did TV recordings for 110 football games 2 years ago. And I mean, so you're traveling over the country, bringing the gear with you, and then it's raining, and then there's like internet issues, and the janitor isn't like letting you onto the field quickly enough, and then it's electricity and it's all sorts of things. But we just have the same studio, run the games from there, have the same like casting setup, and it's so much more comfortable. And I can imagine bringing like all of these cameras and having them hang off the table, and you even don't get the overview. But I've looked into how you could do 40K for this. I think it has to be tabletop simulator. It either has to be pre-recorded and heavily edited, like down from, let's say, 3 hours to maybe an hour and a half with, overview after each phase, but not having people actually play out the phase, because then it's 7 minutes of nothing and then something, and 7 minutes of nothing and then something. Or you could, let's say, have 3 games going at the same time, which I think is a worse idea, but it's easier having 3 games and swapping between. But yeah, people. I mean, all the competitive players play a lot of tabletop simulator that are at the highest level, and but people are kind of I think hesitant to dive full into producing these tournaments in tabletop simulator versus people that are very serious. They just want to compete, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to break that down a bit more. So there's a lot there. So why do you think that if it was to become a professional endeavor that we'd have to go down the road of tabletop simulator? Is it because, like, you talked obviously about the logistic issues in traveling and setting up cameras and stuff like that, but I'm sure that there's a deeper meaning to why you think a professional endeavor may involve or require tabletop simulator being the main platform or equivalent stake, obviously.
Oh yeah. So let's say the London GT, they have I think 3,000 or 4,000 people following them on social media, and they have 800 something people going to the biggest event. So that's maybe the people that have gone to those events in the last 5 years, roughly speaking. So if you want to sell ads onto that, it it's not a lot of people because there's no one viewing, and you don't have people in Australia and the US, and everyone kind of congregating together to view these things, and then people learning about the game, etc., etc. So you couldn't really sell ads effectively to advertisers for 40K at the moment when you don't have streams with a lot of viewership. We have we had the most minor leagues in esports that get funded, because there's so many people watching on TV, and because the second thing is betting, because you have betting on esports, and that brings in a lot of funds to host tournaments and sponsor players, etc., which is not a thing in comes with ups and downs, definitely for esports, but it's basically if you have good streaming and good viewership, that brings in money to take it to the next step.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so I was gonna say, so how important is, you talked about advertising being obviously helps fund the thing, and then betting is another element, and that's a whole can of worms. I know obviously esports as a whole has had its issues, and even real professional sports have had issues with betting and stuff like that. But how important is that sort of advertising for those minor leagues to get up and running? Is it the growth point? Without it, you will never happen.
I mean, if you run purely on volunteers and nothing else, it's difficult, and you have to you can charge the people to play in your league, and you can have some thousands of dollars, and you can buy a trophy, and if you wanted to have any sort of technical gear to broadcast, you need to basically borrow, and I mean, people run on passion, definitely, but not then they get kids and careers and other gigs, and you have to rotate a lot, and but I mean 40K has been going the mile on that, but I mean compared to esports, it's just minor in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, so when you say minor in the sense of the popularity, or I guess the size of people playing, is that what you mean in terms of compared to esports, the number of people who play the game or can participate, or the involvement is not to the scale of obviously League of Legends is obviously ridiculous in terms of scale, but even some other relatively comparable esports I don't know, so that's not as popular like Call of Duty, which is obviously a relatively popular one, but it's not by any means the most popular. Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, yeah, I think Warhammer will not, break the top 30.
Yeah.
Basically,
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess it was interesting to hear there. You said so for you think to become a professional endeavor. And I guess what we define by professional endeavor is someone gets paid full time to play the game, essentially. Whereas, as you said, right now, most people do it via content creation or coaching or by other means. It's a part-time thing. They're not fully funded off tournament prize money, whereas many other professional sports are won by tournaments, etc. So it was interesting to hear there that you actually didn't complain about the game itself being the issue. So you talked about the actual broadcasting and I guess the way in which the game is played being the issue for it to become a professional endeavor. Is there no issues with the competitive game over it itself? There's a lot of inherent flaws in Warhammer as a whole, obviously the measuring and the dice and stuff like that. But you think the game is good enough to be competitive and viewable?
I mean, I played Hearthstone, and there's a ton of randomness involved, So yeah. I mean, for interest, you'd play these 20-round qualifiers, single elimination or double elimination. It would take. I mean, the best players in a best of 3 would win, or in a single game would maybe win 60% of the time, if you just draw dead 1/3 of the time, completely draw dead, and then you automatically win almost a third of the game just based on draw. So I think 40K has a lot going for it. There's some there's a cultural difference, between countries a lot. So if you go to WTC, some people are very used to having this and this is the UK. I've heard Australia as well. Like, so if someone is like maybe running out of time, you'd kind of just help each other out and trying to finish the game in the best possible manner, and like. So it's kind of like that. But some people, if you play someone from some most European countries, they would be like, well, you know the clock rules. You didn't see the clock rules.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do? You want to take my time and you want to like finish, and like won't that become very confusing and very like erratic? And then if it's on the whole team is on the line, won't that be a very uncomfortable thing? And you're like,
Sure.
well, probably will, but this is how it's been done. And they're like, oh, okay. Do you want to do like that? Like, this is the scenario. So I mean, there's not maybe one set way of playing 40K. I think also like 4 or 5 different FAQs that people play by, and the terrain varies dramatically. Like. I think for the US, for example, the terrain is horrible, so they come and play on some terrain, and it's difficult for them, like. But yeah, it's very.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, hey, they're getting better, okay, Jokull. I mean, Champions Cup at the time of recording has just happened, and they're investing. FLG, obviously, being a big major tournament organizer for the US generally. There's obviously a bunch of small independent TOs, but they run a lot of the circuits and the big major events. They've invested heavily in a train, and that's definitely a key differentiator. And as I know, we were just talking before the show about UKTC, that's a big major organizer, and their train differs greatly to the World Team Championships and WTC maps. So I guess this leads into, my next question. How important is it how important is it that we have these sort of tournament circuits for the game to help, professionalize or help the sport? Because I know, behind the scenes, so with esports, and the one I would be most familiar with is Counter-Strike, is they have independent tournaments. Like, so obviously Valve, the people who own and create a Counter-Strike, I think, they own the platform. So they own the platform. They sort of they allow tournaments to run independently of them and without their, overall approval. But they allow like small individuals sort of host the events, like DreamHack, for example. They host a DreamHack tournament, etc. How important is it to have these tournament organizers be independent and run these circuits and events? Is it a big thing in the esports scene to allow this sort of thing?
Definitely. I mean, so for example, if you take the last decade, not this decade, but the one before then, the number one growing company in the US, in the London Stock Exchange, was Games Workshop, and that was literally, I think they had like 2,000% increase in share value, and that was because they had been like hounding everyone that wanted to do anything, basically, not run by them, and then they had their own tournament in the headquarters and nothing else. And I played back and forth, and it was difficult, but so it both comes down to like esports and Warhammer and sports. Like, the simple thing about sports is no one owns the sport, so you can just have a governing body and you can go forward. So in Paris at the Olympics, they agreed to have a Olympic event in esports that's going to be taking place each year now for 5 years. It's going to be leading up to them, integrating esports fully into the Olympics. And esports is classified as a sport in a variety of countries, and Iceland will most likely be the last one to classify it as a sport. We have only us in Norway to go out of Scandinavia. But I mean, if you go to Sweden or Denmark or Finland, it's all classified as sports, But so you have these individual companies that own these games, and I mean, for them, they're in no hurry. They're making very good money on their very lucrative esports, So if they, let's say, allow a bunch of tournaments to be held, and then there's someone who does something unsavory, like that could be a headline, and they're very corporate, so they think, okay, we'll, take as little risk as possible for our bottom line. So they're like barely allowing it, but it's difficult. Epic Games, for example, with Fortnite is very restrictive, and you can't even get a spectator tool really to view the games unless you are kind of half approved by them, but then you can't run ads, and it's very difficult for Fortnite, which is a massive title now. So it varies a lot. I mean, I think it's not good for a competitive thing to be owned by a company, but if you have a very dedicated company to boost it, it can be a good thing. But overall,
sure.
like, if there was a corporate owner of football and they could like have their law team like restrict competition, that wouldn't be ideal.
Sure. Like, so you want, I guess, in your opinion, it's good that the governing body is like sort of evolved a little bit and like helps, I guess, provide support and assistance to these local leagues or tournaments, but not be fully consuming controlling, right? Is that what you're trying to say? Or like provide the
I think like for the competitive side, it would be better if there was no like company that owned the
sure.
title. But
Okay.
I mean, it keeps it fresh that there's a company making new versions all the time. But
Yeah.
in terms of like establishing itself as a sport, like if you view what's not in the Olympics at the moment, esports is by far dramatically the largest kind of sport that's not, and that's just because of that. That's the only reason why it wasn't approved a long time ago, because they have to they have these companies that own the IP and can so you have to, like, if you rush to accept them, then also all these companies are in this great negotiating position with the AOC. IOC.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I mean, the most recently breakdancing was obviously the most popular sport, but unfortunately, some Australian ruined it for all. But she tried really hard, okay, but no. So you talk about there, I guess, companies sometimes not investing in that competitive scene. Is it generally, in your experience or history, is it actually profitable for the business to invest this amount of time and energy into the competitive scene? So, for example, they as you said, like allow for, I guess, spectating, or they invest the time, energy, and resources to develop the competitive environment, or is it more lucrative and profitable for businesses to maybe invest elsewhere?
It is, but it's like if you view the business model, it's not top five. It's
Sure.
good, but not top five. And like if for example, like Activision Blizzard, I mean, StarCraft is massively popular and Overwatch as well, but they're not the cash cow at all. And like if you want to like jeopardize the cash cow by some player saying something unsavory, like I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a lot of doping in esports, and we do anti-doping here, the Icelandic Esports Federation, and like things happen on live TV, and so there's some risk, but yeah.
Yeah, right. I've also heard allegations back in the past. I knew in the Call of Duty scene, that was sort of the one esport I used to follow quite a bit. Was it, I guess, Ritalin or taking some drugs and stuff like that to help boost performance? But anyways, I didn't know about the other elements of it. So, but that's fascinating. Like, there's an anti-doping agency now involved. Are you able to like talk about what that looks like? I'm actually very intrigued. Like, is it I imagine it's not as intrusive as, like, say, what the UFC or other big professional sporting organizations do, like NFL, in the sense of drug testing for steroids and whatever else, or is it as intrusive as maybe as I'm envisioning?
I mean, it's basically showing up at a random event,
Sure.
unannounced, and doing urine testing for performance enhancing, mostly stimulants.
Yeah, right. So better not be drinking too much G Fuel or Red Bulls. No, I'm kidding. Like, there'll be a bit more than the regular level, right? So you can't be. Yeah, I imagine there'll be something a bit in excess of a normal Red Bull or a G Fuel.
We can, yes.
Yeah.
We're not testing for caffeine. I can tell you that. Yeah.
No, not yet. Anyways, but I was going to say. So, do you think maybe that would help? Crazy statement, but is that a requirement, you think, of it becoming professional? Is having that anti-doping element to it, or having a stance on what that looks like?
I think the main thing is just having the money for the players to become professional at it, and if you have money, then I mean, like for example, like Faker or the top Korean teams or Fnatic or whatever. I mean, they're not concerned with if esports is going to be the Olympics. They just want to win the championships and make the money and are not too involved. But and that's something maybe that's more important for the federations and the youth work and bringing this to the next level in terms of that. But I mean, if Warhammer had streams with a lot of viewership, and we could get the kind of people in the hobby, viewing Warhammer every weekend, then there would definitely be a professional scene.
Sure, yeah. And so, I guess, what is if you were, I guess, in charge of, I guess, obviously there's no governing body quite yet for Warhammer as a whole to professionalize, but if you were to give advice or like the tips and tricks of what Warhammer needs to do to evolve into that next stage of having thousands of viewerships and be able to have those professional endeavors, what are the biggest road gaps between it? I know you talked about Tabletop Simulator and maybe editing things down to make it viewable, but are there some other elements that you think need to happen first before we can see, I guess, your top players earning enough that they could take this professionally?
So I think the biggest thing is that Tabletop Simulator is directly against GW's interests, business interests.
Yeah.
So they would never buy out Tabletop Simulator and do it their own version because they want to sell models, and that's absolutely fair. And I mean, if you were able to, let's say, use Tabletop Simulator to make a successful channel, or you'd hire the people and get the equipment and do things, and you could get a cease and desist and have to stop. But you could also maybe work around that, I mean, this Tabletop Simulator is not GW's IP, but it's a gray area. But I think it'd be a fun project. I mean, I think what maybe War Games Live and some of these other companies have done is excellent. But I don't know top Warhammer players that view tape for hours on end. You don't sit down for a 4-hour game and view on War Games Live. You maybe go to the VOD and look for some points on how a game went, and but sitting for 4 hours maybe be the World Championship final game, but every weekend probably not. So yeah, I think having someone committed to doing that properly with Tabletop Simulator is one thing. You'd need basically need someone competent spending maybe 5 or 6 hours editing a broadcast together, and you'd be set. But maybe be a, let's say, if you wanted to have a tournament, it maybe be a 4 or 5 grand endeavor if you had the studio to do it as well.
Yeah, at minimum. And I know, so obviously the one I know of when you talk about Tabletop Simulator events will be Trevi from Tactical Tortoise. I know he does a lot of live streaming and commentating over Tabletop Simulator events, but they're not edited or stuff like that. And look, he does his thing, so good for him. But there's no one doing that edited format just yet. There's the only people who do that edited format would be your people who do play on tabletop or tabletop tactics. But those, even then, they're not the most competitive games. I don't know. Are you familiar with Season of War at all in the Age of Sigmar scene? Have you heard of that channel at all?
I haven't, no, but I've seen the Age of Sigmar guys at LVO, and oh my god, what's that cool community!
Yeah, cool community, cool models, and everything. So we're like, damn, why are we playing the wrong game? But I know those. I've always aspired. They do, and for people who've never watched them, if you're ever interested in Age of Sigmar, they're always great, 30-40 minute battle reports, but they're a bit more on the competitive side, and they just do great editing, and it's fantastic. It's what I think that short form battle report content looks like, and I think it can grow in that sense. And look, I know maybe if I actually stuck my toes deeper into Age of Sigmar, maybe they're not the most competitive, but from my eyes looking in, it looks relatively competitive. And I know the people who do the channel are one of the guys was on the Team Canada team and stuff like that. So there's some depth to it, but that's a whole other tangent and depth. So you talked about though editing. So obviously War Games Live, they do obviously it all live, and there are other sports which do take quite time. So obviously from Australia, cricket is obviously a very famous sport which takes fucking forever to play, and people love it and watch it, and it's a long form content. But why do you think it needs to be edited down for it to become professional? Is it because us Zoomer brains and Gen Z people have become addicted to TikTok and need a short instinct go or is there something else to it?
So I was literally faced with this problem this spring. So we were looking at there's a ton of people playing esports, but we're also looking at very young kids and people above 50 and people above 60 and what can we do? Because there's people playing on the computer and not involved with us and so what we looked at was chess, online chess, because of during COVID, a lot of people watched Queen's Gambit and played on their phones, and it's a very popular thing in Iceland. But they hadn't been on TV for a while, for like 10 plus years. And we were looking at, so the standard format is 4-hour games in chess, and you play week after week after week, and everyone plays against everyone, and it's full night, 4 hours, one game, which sounds a lot like 40K. And we thought, okay, do we do that? And that wouldn't be a good experience, and we'd have to pay, the production people 6 hours worth of time plus, and that's expensive, and then obviously we'd have to play all throughout the whole tournament, and it would be, a massive endeavor. So what we went going for was we went for 16 players, single elimination. So it's best of 10. Single elimination chess, and each game is roughly about 8 minutes. So you have 3 minutes per person, then 2 seconds extra per game per move played. So it's rapid blitz chess, and you play a ton of games, and you then the person is eliminated, which is not heard of in chess to have a single elimination bracket, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of the esports way. What we did also, we have people show up in person to the esports center and go on webcam and play on webcam, and it's mostly grandmasters in their 60s, and that's very entertaining seeing them in that perspective. And we have an interview before and an interview after, and we do 2 matches per evening. But it's I mean, that tournament has an eight grand prize pool, and we're on our first go, and we could grow that, and the viewership is decent, and we have companies involved in sponsoring that, and that's something that could be done, I think, with 40K if done correctly.
Interesting. That sounds like a cool format, and I'm glad people took off and people adopted to it or were intrigued with it. Do you think? So you talked. Do you think chess would be, I guess, the model for which Warhammer could follow? Or would there be another sport organization you think we, I guess, emulate very similar and we could probably follow in their footsteps? Would it be Magic the Gathering or Professional Scrabble, or is there another video game maybe that we could follow?
I think both Professional Scrabble and chess are both excellent. I mean, if we could get the games down to an hour, I think we're all set. It doesn't need to be 10 minutes or 20 minutes, 30 minutes. People let's say, a Fortnite game is maybe it's not the most viewer friendly out of all the esports, but it's 50 minutes roughly about. And that's completely fine. You do two matches per evening and you have a good time, and I mean, people watch 90-minute soccer games, and that's also fine, but 3 hours is just pushing it, So if you can get it down to an hour and a half, an hour, which is definitely doable with editing and having everything live, it's easier, but it's not better, but it's a lot easier. So almost everyone does it, and that's completely fine. But if it could be done pre-recorded, and I think it can be, but it's just about who is going to be the first to do that, I think.
Sure. And I guess to get down to hour and a half elements, obviously removing editing aside, do you think maybe look at the point levels in which we compete at, or some of the elements of 40K could be reduced to get that field? So do you think that'd still become as viewer friendly. So, for example, if you played like a kill team equivalent or something halfway between, like, let's say, what is 1,000 points now and 2,000, like 1,500 or 1,000 points, do you think that'd still be as viewer friendly and enticing?
I mean, you could play like Warhammer Underworlds, the card game, and like that's probably the most viewer friendly at the moment. But I think, I mean, it would need from the ground up revamp.
Sure.
Just 2,000 points and nothing else at the moment. So if that was done, sure. But I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if you know StarCraft, but like teams for StarCraft, very unbalanced, kind of fun, but not serious. So it's kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah, I actually, so when I was preparing for this video, I was trying to think about discussions between, because Warhammer is very unique in the sense of currently right now, I guess the teams format has taken off massively compared to singles, so it's gaining a lot of popularity. And I was trying to think of like another game system which had that sort of two elements to it. Like, and the next thing I thought was honestly Magic the Gathering, which obviously, yes, within its like singles format has the different formats of, I guess, apologies, like standard, modern, legacy, etc. Which for people who aren't aware is, I guess, the card pool. So the amount of cards, the cards which you have access to vary, but also within Magic the Gathering, there is also a teams format of, I know, like your deck can play a different deck, and I'm going to butcher. I don't think there's a pairing process for it, but I could be completely wrong. Very similar to Warhammer, but so in StarCraft there is a teams format as well. I've only known about the singles format, but you said it's completely unbalanced. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like like maybe 500 points of Warhammer, but
sure.
I mean, I think people would watch that. If you got the top players and you make it exciting, you could, yeah.
Okay, so I guess, and I want to sort of deep dive a little bit there. So obviously, right now we have the teams and the singles formats are quite obviously relatively popular. Does that hurt the game at all, having these two different formats, or does it maybe help the broader appeal?
I mean, it's kind of like Fortnite. I mean, the most just generic Fortnite is most popular and the competitive format, but you could play. So we have a high school league. So you basically do 3 games. We have Counter-Strike, Rocket League, and Valorant. But we're looking at maybe swapping out Valorant for Fortnite, but then you have to have a team. And Fortnite is 100 people battle royale, and that's not viable. So you can do like 3v3 in Fortnite.
Sure.
And it's kind of a goof, but it's also fun, and it's roughly the same skills. And I think you could make, 500 points of Warhammer would be mostly list building, but it'd be kind of fun as well. Like, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and do you think if we went down that rabbit hole, like 500, 1,000 points, I guess for me, like the grand appeal of Warhammer is that sort of that full army and the scale of things. It's very enticing for me. Do you think if we went down that rabbit hole of 500 to 1,000 points, we may lose a lot of, I know it sounds like, I guess, stupid, but lose, I guess, a lot of the luster or appeal that we originally had, and like it would lose, I guess. Yes, it may work economically, it makes sense, but for the people who want to play and actually do it, it's just not the same. It's like back in my day, Warhammer was this, and it's just not the same.
I mean, would you want want a margarita pizza or no pizza at all? Like that's nice. Like it's still pizza. Like
Yeah.
I mean, it's not some deluxe, extra, but like go get on with it. Like,
yeah, that's fair enough. And like, I guess different strokes for different folks, and who knows what it could look like, and maybe become the new popular thing. So
what we did, we had a tournament for the people in the youth groups or youth training, essentially, that practice esports every week in a athletic club. So we had 6 to 16-year-olds, and what we had is that obviously Counter-Strike is not allowed for 6-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds because of the age limit. Fortnite is massive, but then you have all these people playing Minecraft, and I mean, Minecraft is not a let's say, it's not a competitive thing like that, So we found a custom high score mod, and we have a design competition, and because there's a lot of girls as well involved, and that's been very popular, with bringing them. So we found ways to make it, exciting, and people, get very competitive within that scope, although it's not completely optimized Counter-Strike or Valorant, with everything being completely planned out. But it's fun, and so I think there's potential, but I think it would need a lot of work from TW or a very dedicated company to try and bring 2,000 points down to an hour and a half, which I think is difficult. But if that happens, I really do hope that TW does not cancel them for it. Yeah.
No, of course not.
I think it would be good for them if it got off the ground.
Sure, absolutely. And it's interesting you talked about there the competitive design competition for Minecraft, because it just sparked a light bulb moment in my brain. I was like, oh, of course, like Golden Demon, the painting competition. And I would say that's a lot more professionalized in a number of ways. I know, yes, they don't, for example, same as competitive Warhammer, they don't earn a living just off their painting competitions and prize money. A lot of it is coaching and commission painting, etc. But that's something I would say is probably maybe one step ahead of where the competitive Warhammer side is, but maybe that's on the horizon as well. And I'm sure there'll be many artists out there who would love to earn a living just by painting minis and not having to do content and stuff like that. But I digress. That's just another discussion for another day. So I wanted to talk about, so one of the big barriers of entry to Warhammer is obviously the cost and like acquiring the models and the hobby side of things. Is that maybe, I guess, a hindrance for it to become a professional endeavor? Because obviously a lot of the most popular games are actually free to play, and then you can pay or pay for cosmetics on top of that, or is it a much lower barrier to entry? Do you think that's going to be something that we hindrance the competitive game? Is this having to acquire the models, paint the models, when you can get them?
I mean, yes and no. Like for Counter-Strike, you need... So with Counter-Strike 2 being out, you need a ridiculously expensive computer to run it completely optimally. So you spend like 2.5 grand on a computer, and so that's comparable to whatever. People find ways to make it work. I mean, League of Legends maybe is a very special thing with being free to play. So every 12-year-old in Eastern Europe would go and I can either go and play like this game that's going to cost me $80 or this that's free to play, and so they'll just go to that one, and so they all went to that one, and that's a positive thing, I think. But I mean, it's not. So you look at like what could make it really, really, really big, and like for example with Valorant, there's all these powers and special moves and things you need to know about, like. And we see this maybe with the high school championships. We have the parents show up, and there's very little activity when the Valorant game is going on. But then you go to Rocket League, and that's a car and a ball and a goal. And it's it's 1-on-1 and 2-on-3, and then people are cheering and more involved because they know what's going on. So that's I think important with that. And that's partly I think why Counter-Strike is so popular. But not that as I have a potential as Rocket League, but I think so. If you had to rank Warhammer within that, I think it's maybe on the lower side, but not impossibly, low. I mean,
sure,
like B tier, I guess, if you had to put it into a tier list.
Oh, of course. Oh, there you go. Put it into a tier list. That will increase the viewership. We'll do it for another time. But it's interesting what you say, like being able to sort of easily recognize how the game is going or what the scores look like. That example of Rocket League is much more tolerable for someone who is new to the area versus someone versus like I say League of Legends or Valorant, where you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like I'd have I've tried multiple times to watch League of Legends matches and look, I've watched clips and stuff like that, but I could not tell you what the fuck is going on. Like I can see someone's attacking. I'm not going to get right the pylon, the home center, and then that's about it. That's as far as I'll go. But anyway, so maybe Warhammer maybe with a good stream layout and I guess better explanation and commentary will get us there. So You talked about there, obviously, with your own organization, having those leagues and academies and influencing the young. So do you think Warhammer needs to do something very similar of setting up these academies or clubs to introduce people young so that way they can develop and grow into doing it in their 20s and 30s or wherever?
I think it's difficult. It's quite difficult. I mean, because if you're dealing with politicians or senators or things, and you have to go and describe why this deserves funding, it's going to be becoming a problem. So
Sure.
with the federation, for example, like what we have is we did a poll a few years ago, and we have a new poll coming out this month. We're redoing it. So if you go by kids in elementary school, 99% of boys play video games.
Yeah.
99. And 69% of girls play video games. And if you go and look at, okay, how many of the parents are worried about how much screen time and computer game time their kids have, it's all of them. So
yeah,
if you go to the ministries and talk with the staff there, all the parents are wondering about this. So where do kids play video games? At home alone, So do you want them to do that? Or do you want them to be, inside organized youth groups with the coaches? It's social. So what we do is if you go to esports practice, it's generally about 90 minutes, but 40 of that is exercise, So you have exercise, technical drills, and then playing in the end, essentially, But in between that, you have education about internet security and responsible play, and it's all the sorts of things that people do in these clubs, other than just play Fortnite or Counter-Strike or what it is. So it's I think board games are not really out there, compared to esports, kind of,
Yeah, but that's not to say it won't go there eventually. I guess if it has the funding or the growth and the popularity, it's not to say that's not possible. If I'm not mistaken, it just requires a bit of time and energy and growth and popularity. So that's cool to hear. And look, I wouldn't hate, obviously, before we play any Warhammer game, a little bit of exercise. I know we could definitely all use it, some of us. So it's a good incentive and a good initiative to keep it social and help improve each other's health and well-being. We talked, obviously, Warhammer, I guess Games Workshop has taken a great step forward in terms of balancing the game and investing time and resources into the competitive environment. Is there anything you think, though, that we're still missing? So if you could whisper into Josh Roberts' ear or Mike Brandt's ear or the board and CEOs, is there anything that you think the game is missing just yet which will make us jump to that next level, other than obviously maybe reducing the points cost and making the games not as long?
I mean, I think if you had no rerolls in the game at all, no ability to reroll any of the dice, I think would make it more viewer friendly. But I would hate that as a competitive player because you want consistency in your moves. So it's I mean it's instantly one. Yeah, I think that might be it. But I mean, they're just not going to make a computer variant of Warhammer 40k because it's just not in that direct interest. What they could do is not shut it down when, and I say when, not if someone does it properly, because that's coming sooner or later if Warhammer keeps growing, but then you can go two ways. You can shut it down, or you can support it, or even be ambivalent towards it.
Sure. Do you think, look, if Games Workshop are interested, do you think that whole idea of maybe licensing or having within Tabletop Simulator or whatever module that you could pay for a pack which allows for you to buy the models and stuff like that, do you think that could be a way forward? But it's probably just not in the best interest of Games Workshop as a whole.
I think then they would always be all of a sudden be like Space Elf,
yeah, sure,
Phoenix Man, with the same stats. Sadly,
sure.
It's just that thing they couldn't just do that. But Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's complicated. It's it's that part of it. That's but I think if you had like community events and you had the ability to do these things, then that'd be a positive thing, But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's good. Like, yeah, it's something that I guess we aren't in control of, and but maybe in the future, someone finds a great idea, or the format itself allows for it to become this, I guess, unicorn or utopia of an hour and a half games, smaller points, and be able to stream to a tabletop simulator. But we're just not there yet. So, but I want to ask a question. So, obviously, Warhammer as a whole, sometimes because of there's so many armies, it's very hard to balance. And look on obviously the meta watch and the balanced data slates and other things play a factor in trying to balance the armies. But how important is it for a competitive game to be balanced, or is it not as important?
I mean, it's a different thing. Like with Hearthstone, you have all of this variance, and
Yeah.
then it becomes about consistency. And do you complain about the luck when you bomb out of 3 tournaments in a row, or do you just focus on so maybe you have below draw, but did you make every move perfectly?
Yeah.
Probably not. So what are you focusing on? And like that's the thing. Like I don't know. So they have these tournaments now where it's extremely sophisticated AI playing chess against extremely sophisticated AI, like way beyond what Magnus Carlsen on the top chess players could ever dream of. And you
Yep.
see this like cold intelligence doing things, and it puts complaining about dice in such a ridiculous perspective. Like, okay, that's one part of it, but what about all these other things? You have all of this, possible moves that you could make with the stratagems and the movement and endless possibilities. So, how far are you away from having played optimally? Probably quite far. So, do you focus on the dice, or do you focus on what you could do better? And the players that do that do better. But I mean, the element in like very high level 40k is you also have to like acknowledge that there are limitations. So like for example, now we're going to LGT, and the balance is best it's ever been, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like I would say it's 70% chance plus that you have an S tier player on guard or sisters to win the event. I think a lot have to go correctly for someone not to have that happen. Versus last year it was balance was not as good, but it was a foregone conclusion that it would be a CSM or Elda player. It's more likely to be an Elda player. The upside turned out to be a CSM player, but so you have to kind of acknowledge that. But and at least now in 40k it's about like figuring out what is viable, what matchups are not automatically won if you play against someone at the same level as you are, and then finding those 3 or 4 matchups that you have to practice and grinding them out consistently. And currently that's having a ton of games against sisters, a ton of games against Gladius, and a ton of games against T-Sons and guard. And the good thing about guard is people don't face it often, so many will face it for the first time, and then they'll just have they won't have the advantage in that one probably.
Sure. So I guess to summarize what you're saying is balance is important. It's helpful, obviously, for making it a better game, but it's not the most important thing. And like there's like sort of, I guess, bands of which you can have balance. And as long as, I guess, Games Workshop keep doing what they're doing, maybe of updating every 3 months the points at least, and then the big balance patches every 6 months at least, we can try and keep it within the bands. But yeah.
I mean,
So
like, yeah.
go.
With like balance, I mean, like it's more for the players than the overall thing. So like you can have if it's not too absurd levels, like I played Wings of Liberty, StarCraft, and the balance was not great. You had this, some like auto lose spawns. You had no chance for certain factions. But then you just, I mean, competitive players just move beyond that very quickly and just figure out, okay, what is viable? Okay, well, we'll do 7 flyers against 7 flyers, and that will be the thing, and that's it, But out of that being how long it's each game, how easy it is for someone to show up, like people can literally go to a Counter-Strike event, with 4 friends, and 3 of them have played Counter-Strike and 2 of them have never played Counter-Strike, and drink beer and have a great time, and they won't be completely lost. Whereas they can't do that with a Warhammer game,
Sure.
I think that's a bigger thing. But balance, I mean, it's because at the moment, I mean, Warhammer is for the players playing it, not for anyone else, and that's very important for the player playing it, not to face. And it's also about having painted these fun models and being able to play those, But
yeah, okay, that's good to hear, and I guess hopefully we'll keep that essence of what Warhammer essentially is. So I guess my next question is, so obviously very similar to, I guess, a lot of the other sports, there's multifacets to them, as you talked about, like with, I guess, say Rocket League, like there's the competitive, apologies, we'll talk about what is it? What's Fortnite? Apologies, Fortnite.
Yeah.
So obviously there's that battle royale format, which is like one element, and then there's the 3v3, and there's different formats within the game. Within Warhammer as a whole, there's generally like 3 subsets of, I guess, the lore, the hobby side, which is the painting and the modeling, and then the gaming side. And obviously within gaming, there's a competitive subset. My question is, like, is it helpful for the Warhammer game to have these distinct categories, or are the most successful competitive games generally only focus on the competitive element?
So this is what was the most different for me, coming from an esports and chess background, when people were talking about, well, I'm flying out to this event and trying to do well, but I'm not going to play the best thing that I think will do the best because of the lore and the thing. And like, I mean, in esports, people think like, are you on the spectrum? Like, what's happening? Like, what? Like, if there's tens of thousands of dollars on the line, you don't play. You don't play the Imperial agents. Like you just leave them on the. You have to pay your rent and get things done. And like, so that's because there's no money involved, and because it's a hobby essentially, a competitive and fun hobby we all love, of course, so that's the luxury that happens with it being no money on the line, but for someone who's played a lot with a lot of money on the line, that was interesting getting used to.
Sure. So look, I mean, which Warhammer player who plays competitively isn't a bit on the spectrum? Let's be legit, Jokull. I mean, let's be honest a little bit, but it is definitely some part of it where people, I guess, do take that divide between taking it seriously and like taking a net list or the most competitive meta choice, and then taking something which is fun and fluffy or what you've got painted. That sort of breakthrough just hasn't happened yet. But so do you think it's good that Warhammer still has that, or if we want to take it to the next level competitively, we need to just go through that ceiling and say, guys, just take the shit that's really good?
I mean, I love Warhammer. I think it's so much fun. Like I kind of wouldn't have it any other way at the moment, And like, I mean, there was a time when you had 18 wraiths, and that was the thing that was to be played. And like last, so I play teams for Ignite in the UKTC circuit, and we had the format is 5v5, and we had a scenario where we knew that the wraiths were top 5. But none of us wanted to play it, and we figured that like, thankfully it wasn't dramatically stronger than everything else. It was just probably 3rd or 4th or something. So we took like 4 out of the top 5, and then faction number 7 or something, just to make it work.
Sure.
So just because we want to have a more fun weekend, and so that's one thing, But yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I really enjoy this, figuring out this off meta thing that's really good, and like and making that work, and I think WTC is such a cool thing, because of the 8v8 team element. You can figure out a faction that's extremely strong. For example, us in Iceland, we took an AdMech this year, and in certain nation versus nation matches, we did very well with them because we knew how to pair them, and some people didn't know how to pair them, and but they also have huge weaknesses, which were a problem for us as well. So it's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I know Haidar did very well with his AdMech, or did decently well with that AdMech horde list, and people would go, "What the fuck is this?" And I'm sure he did great. And so it's interesting you hear about, like, even right now competitively, it's okay still to take the fun things or do the things that you want to do. Like is it like don't take the Necron 18 race Canoptic Court, which is yes technically the most competitive or the most viable, but there is a fun element to it still right now, and maybe there's a good meta pick as to why you're not taking the top thing. So, for example, Team France at this most recent WTC, they didn't take Sisters of Battle, where almost everyone else did take Sisters of Battle, or they took those off meta picks. So there is some competitive element to it, but also I'm sure for not as serious events, I mean, some fun elements or reason to do so. I guess my question, Jokull, is for people who may be aspiring to be competitive Warhammer players, if it never, obviously it'd be great for the game. I think everyone wants it to be the most popular, competitive, and viable and financially reasonable game it can be. But why is it? I know it's a broad question, but why is it still okay even if it never gets there? Why is it still okay to compete and play in this game as a whole? Like, for example, yourself, like you could be playing some other esports, for example, which have a better prize pool and more competitive viability or support. But why should it be okay that we play a game which is suboptimal in that sense?
I mean, it's social and it's so much fun. You get to travel and I don't know. It's like it's what you prefer, kind of like like in esports is a lot more partying and a lot more like it's a kind of quick living, and
Sure.
And everyone is doing it full time, not on the side, and so that's a positive for some things. I think there's more rules arguing in 40k. I think just in esports you just have something happen on the screen. There's no debate.
Yeah.
I think that's great because in very competitive 40k it's often about like you try and be as pleasant as possible, but then it's also like not like people walk over you, and that's not a part that I enjoy personally. I would prefer it if it just there was none of that having to be played. You just played and there was a result that came on the screen.
Sure.
But I mean, it's a lot of fun though. I think people are gravitating towards teams at the moment. A lot of the top tier competitive players, because in teams you don't have to pick the two strongest factions. Like you don't have to, like before when WTC was like, if you wanted to be a player on Team France, you could not take Sisters, but if you wanted to win LGT, it would have to happen that weekend before the indirect nerf on the Flamers and T-Sons. You could pick T-Sons or you could pick T-Sons, kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
Like maybe Sisters on a very favorable day, but most likely not.
No, that's very fair. So before we wrap things up, Jokull, is there any final, words of wisdom or anything you want to say about this topic? And then I'll let you do any shout-outs or plugs that you may have.
Big question. I mean, like, any
Put you off guard.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for 40k, like, at least in my opinion, the most important thing is just to really enjoy the game. Like, if you really deeply enjoy the game, you can become good at playing that game. Like if it's become all about having to win and it's become all about an ego or this or that, it becomes so much more difficult. I don't know, like it's one of those things. Like I'm going to LTT and I'm playing the RTT the day before just to get 3 more games of Warhammer because I love Warhammer, like, and it's like, oh, what? It's an RTT, and there's no world-class players, and it's not going to be featured in that podcast. It's 3 games of 40k against people I haven't met before, and it's fun, to me. So then it's easy to get the reps in and do those things you need to become strong. So I think like having to win or being the best meta player and not being able to experiment because of that, like I think that's a detriment if possible, but it's also just a more fun way to play.
Yeah, that's very fair. And well, best of luck for you at the LGT. I hear, what are you taking to the LGT?
Drukari this time around, yeah. I haven't had a ton of time to play because of work, but I'm hoping to give it a good go. I think if I don't hit sisters in game 2 and 5, I think it should be okay. But there's going to be a lot of sisters, but who knows? Hoping for the best.
That's all right. I'm sure your fellow Icelandic teammate Mitch Beard has given you the insights of how you beat his beloved faction, or someone else has, at least someone, maybe.
I play sisters myself. It's a strong faction at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. Very good. Oh, do you have any final plugs or shout outs you'd like to make, Jokull, before we wrap things up?
I guess since we have it now, let's plug out the Sister Act podcast and you just mentioned my good friend Mitch Beard and teammate for WTC Iceland, and I definitely recommend the Fireside. They just had a video come out about a tier list for LGT, which I'm gonna be viewing tomorrow. So.
Very good. Yeah, he's got the Team Ignite jersey on for the people who are watching the screen. So kudos to you, and you're part of the greater team. And I'll have links below for Team Iceland and Team Ignite. So give them a like on Facebook and follow along because they're a great bunch of dudes, and they're definitely the favorite Nordic country of the 4. So we'll give them that, right? Of course. So very appreciate the chat here, Jokull. Really enjoyable, very insightful. Definitely something to take away from myself, and I guess we'll see what the next little while looks like. Maybe we'll be playing, we'll reconvene 3-4 years from now. We'll be playing 1,000-point equivalents and an hour-and-a-half games. And look, I definitely know the time will be great, but maybe is the Warhammer the same? We'll leave that to everyone else. So really appreciate Jokull. Have a great night, and thanks everyone for watching. Take care.